Good morning, everyone. My name is Casey Anderson. I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support. We are going to be starting here in just a minute. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Adult Education Strategic Action Subcommittee webinar. Our presenters today are going to be Jennifer K. Foster from the Illinois Community College Board and Barbara Endel from the Jobs for the Future. I wanted to let everyone know that you've been added in listen-only mode, so you do not have ability to address the committee. You're all on mute. We also will be recording today's webinar, so it will be available for access after the presentation. 3 handouts have been attached. You have a copy of the PowerPoint that's running today, a copy of the strategic plan for adult education, and then a one-page or a summary brief of the strategic plan, and those can be accessed under the handouts tab. Finally, for question and answer session, you can enter in your questions under the question pane, and we'll be reading those out. So go ahead and feel free to submit those at any point throughout the webinar, and then when we have question and answer, those questions will be provided. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jennifer K. Foster. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. And good morning, everyone. And thank you for being available this morning to just get a brief overview of the next steps of the strategic plan for adult education. We certainly appreciate your attendance, and we certainly look forward to working with you at the meeting that's coming up on this Thursday. So we will begin the presentation when we promise to make it as brief as possible so that we can get you back to your day and the work at hand. We are so pleased with the strategic plan and the outcomes that came as a part of the strategic plan. We are going to review some of the goals and the objectives that we came up with, and we will talk about what our expectations are as we move forward. So we will continue to have discussions about this throughout the presentation, but also on Thursday. We wanted to just give you a little brief overview because we think that it's important in terms of the pre-planning, and we wanted to maximize the amount of time that we have on Thursday in our discussions and developing our action steps. And this is just a quote from our executive director, and also Dr. Anderson was the chair of the Strategic Planning Task Force. And so as a part of that process, one of the things that she emphasized as a part of the strategic plan is that we are more intentionally aligning adult education as the state's foundational workforce development partner. And so we want to make sure that adult education is at the forefront of a lot of different things happening. We're involved in every part of the workforce development process. We're involved at the state level as it relates to the governor's initiatives, the RAP committee, and a lot of other committees that focus on career pathways. And I think that's a great opportunity for us to continue to push adult education and also to continue to align with all of the services that are available. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the webinar. We're going to review some of the activities and the core elements that were identified as a part of the strategic plan. The strategic plan is a 5-year process that will run from 2018 through 2023. We are going to talk about the strategic action subcommittee work and what you will be doing as a part of the process. The task force, the 29-member task force, has already developed the goals as well as some of the objectives. Now it's up to this committee to develop a lot of the strategic action steps in helping us to move forward and making sure that we're identifying all of those areas that will both connect us externally as well as internal to the process. We will also preview the agenda and the process by which we're going to develop the action plan for our meeting as we go into our meeting on March 1st in Bloomington. And then we will allow time for question and answer, not only at the end of the presentation, but also throughout the presentation. So if you have questions, as Casey has said, please put those in the chat box so that we can make sure that we answer those. So now we're going to just review the activities and some of the core elements of the strategic plan. Just to give you sort of a summary of the things that have occurred throughout the process, there are many of you that are on the line that were a part of the task force and remember all of these exciting events that happened over the course of the past few months. We talked a lot, and I'm not going to go over all of these, but I will just kind of summarize all of the information that is on this slide. There were lots of things that we talked about. We talked about to our adult education community. We wanted to make sure that we had the task force that actually started the process, and this is as a result of Senate Joint Resolution 40. We made sure that as a part of that Senate Joint Resolution that there were several individuals that were identified as a part of the process, and that included legislators and also other state agencies as well as adult education providers. We also had career technical education that was represented, our chief academic officers within community colleges. We had philanthropic organizations as well as our President's Council. So we wanted to make sure that there was a well-rounded number of individuals on the council. It was approximately 29 members, and we made sure that we considered everyone in the process, as well as made sure that the adult education community at large provided comments on the strategic plan. And we made sure that as we went through the process, as you can see, refining of the goals and developing the draft strategic plan and also asking for public comment as well as written comment, we wanted to make sure that we were getting a wide range of comments from a variety of individuals. And as much as possible, we tried to incorporate those areas within the plan. We had our final task force meeting on January 16th, and where we finalized the goals and the structure, as well as we were able to submit on time on January 31st the 5-year strategic plan for adult education. So a lot of things happened over the course of a few months, but I think we have a very good document that we put together, the task force put together, and I think that in our discussions on Thursday, you will be quite pleased with the outcome. So in terms of why the creation of a strategic plan for adult education, I just wanted to really reiterate a lot of the statistics that have been quoted. 1.1 million individuals without a high school diploma, 2.8 Illinois residents speak a language other than English, and also approximately 350,000 immigrants that reside in Illinois. We wanted to put these statistics before you to remind you of the critical need that we have in terms of moving individuals into post-secondary education as well as into employment. But not only moving them in that direction, but making sure that we put them in industry recognized fields that will yield to them a family sustaining wage in the future. So we want to make sure that we keep these figures in mind as to why we're developing career pathways or expanding career pathway opportunities in adult education. So as we are looking at the plan, a couple of the things that we want to do is expanding and scaling comprehensive career pathways across Illinois. We have a lot of things that are going on in Illinois. We have a lot of things that are happening within the adult education program. We also have a lot of things that are happening outside of Illinois. So what we want to do in terms of developing the strategic plan, but also developing the action steps and understanding that the goals are the broader category, the objectives really concentrate us, but the action steps are going to be the ones that will help us to fulfill the objectives as well as the overarching goal. So we want to look at those best practices that are available, both internal as well as externally to Illinois, and see which ones apply to adult education and how can we scale those throughout the state. Career pathway, there is a career pathway definition that has been developed through that is being used by all of the state agencies, and we want to continue that. And so in order to do that, we have to focus on that previous screen of the 1.1 million, the 2.8, as well as the 350,000. So responding to another area is responding to a future of work that will demand advanced skills and training in the new economy. So no longer will a high school equivalency be the way that an individual gets into employment, but they have to have some sort of an industry recognized credential in order to do that. And we know that within Illinois, by the year 2020, 70% of the jobs will require some post-secondary education training or an industry recognized credential. And as we talk about our adult education performance targets, no longer will we be counted at the federal level for a high school equivalency, but it's a high school equivalency and transitioning to post-secondary education, a high school equivalency, and transition to employment. So we have to make sure that we're keeping those things in mind. So looking at the differences, we had our strategic plan creating career pathways for adult learners back in 2009 through 2014. And then now we're beginning with our adult education strategic plan for the next 5 years. So you can see some of the differences there, but also understanding that we were developing career pathways back in 2009, but we're actually scaling those career pathways within the new strategic plan. We wanted to talk a lot about the middle skills gap and the unfilled openings. Now we have to talk about job creation and making sure that we are preparing individuals for a future of work. We also talked a lot about student access and student support. Now we have moved forward. While those things are still important, we are talking about integrated education and training. So in Illinois, our integrated education is the ICAPS program and the bridge programs that we have. So how do we definitely take a look at where we were versus where we're going? With the Great Recession back in 2009, we had 11% unemployment. Now we're looking at 4%. So it's up to us to help to develop action steps that will help to scale what we're doing, as well as the previous slide indicated, to respond to the new economy and the future of work. So we have our new strategic plan. If you haven't taken a look at it, we ask that you do. This is expanding career pathway opportunities in adult education. I think I would not call it bedtime reading because when you have bedtime reading, sometimes you fall asleep on it, but this will get you reinvigorated, and I think that you will probably stay up all night if you started to read this because it really gives you a lot of different ideas in terms of how we can structure things in adult education as far as at the state level, but also at the local program level. So here's our vision statement, and it's quite long because we really wanted to make sure that we were including the right elements so that we make sure that our vision really set the course for the new direction. So in partnership with other stakeholders, we will create learning opportunities that are aligned with statewide education, training, and employment strategies to ensure all adult learners have access to and success across services that are cohesive, coordinated, and innovative to promote better economic and sustainable career pathways. So we want to make sure that we are moving the process forward in order to make sure that there are family-sustaining wages, making sure that we have equity amongst all of our individuals that we're serving in programs, making sure that they have access to the services, making sure that we are creating that learning environment that promotes a career pathway. So some of the guiding principles, and I won't go through in detail, but you can read some of these, but I will just place emphasis on a few of the areas. One of the things that we wanted to do as a part of this strategic plan is to make sure that we were responsive to the needs of not only the students that we serve, but making sure that we're including business as a part of those discussions, as well as making sure that we have equity across all of the populations that we serve in terms of access. So we want to make sure that we're inclusive of all of our adult learners, from those individuals that are low literate to those individuals in correctional institutions, as well as our English language learner population. We also wanted to encourage innovation. We wanted to make sure that we're creating career pathway frameworks. We've just completed a framework with our employability skills, the foundation there. We want to continue to create these frameworks so that we can help to support our students as they move into employment as well as into post-secondary education. Again, making sure that we identify promising practices and making sure that we are scaling those throughout all of our programs and the services that we offer. We also want to encourage collaboration and alignment. As you know, within the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, we want to make sure that as we're moving through the process, collaboration under the law is a requirement. So as our adult educators are working within the local one-stops as a part of the local workforce investment boards, innovation boards, but we want to make sure that we're pushing that collaboration. One of the things that I still hold true as a part of this strategic plan direction that we're going in has been under the last strategic plan, is that we cannot accomplish this alone. We really need to work with other partners to define what it is that we do successfully and also what they do, and how can we incorporate that as a part of what we do. So we want to make sure that those supports are identified, that we're here to reduce barriers for our students so that they can access other opportunities within the system of workforce. That includes if they are eligible for other services that may help to reduce some of the barriers. We want to do a better job of identifying those. And so the only way that we can do that is to make sure that we're collaborating. We also want to make sure that we are aligning our curriculum with the college and career readiness standards as well as with labor market needs. Now more than ever, we have to be focused, and the best way to align and make sure that we are focused on labor market needs is to make sure as much as possible within the classroom that we are contextualizing the curriculum and making sure that that is available to everyone. And we know that studies have shown that contextualization of curriculum helps the learning process for the student. The next thing we want to do is to make sure that we provide the high quality professional development and training, not only for our adult education system, but also in collaboration with our partners, particularly our core partner agencies. And we want to make sure that we are developing that professional development so that we can make sure that as we're moving into our performance standards, our national reporting system, that we are comparing apples to apples. So if we're doing some things that are just wonderful in terms of assessing our students, using the locator, using our ESL assessments, making sure that our partner agencies also have that same quality training as our adult education staff has. We also want to make sure that we are enhancing the staff within the programs, making sure that the high quality professional development and training is actually a part of the classroom. And how do we evaluate that and make sure that the curriculum that is being developed in the adult education program is actually being taught in the classroom. Accountability, that's still a part of what we have to do, not only at the federal level, but also at the state level. We want to make sure that we're analyzing our data for continuous improvement. We also want to make sure, I've had some questions about developing when are we going to look at the funding piece. And here's the area that really concentrates on it, is developing funding mechanisms to encourage ongoing career pathway development. So that is a part of the process. And lastly, the technology, making sure that we incorporate technology into the classroom, making sure that we use promoting digital literacy in adult education. So we want to make sure that technology is very important. And if you have a cell phone, that's technology. And so we want to make sure that as we talk about college and career readiness, that our students are also ready to embark upon that process. So we need to make sure that technology is phased in as a part of our instructional standards, as well as the opportunities for our students. So at this point, I'm going to pause and ask if there are any questions related to the material that I just presented. I know I went through it pretty quickly, but if you review the information within the strategic plan, I think you will get a pretty wholesome understanding of what we're trying to do. So I'll open it up for questions. Casey, are there any questions so far?
There are no questions as of yet.
Okay. We'll pause here for a couple of seconds before we move into the next.
And if you would like to submit questions, you can go to that questions pane and go ahead and type your responses in there.
Okay, so if you don't have any questions right now, what we'll do is we will definitely give you another opportunity. So we encourage questions so that we make sure that we give you the information that's necessary in order to be able to develop those action steps that we are talking about today. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. Barbara Endel. Dr. Endel is a senior director at Jobs for the Future, and she has been our facilitator from, I think we started this process somewhere in August, July, August, and she has done a phenomenal job. She is the author of our strategic plan, and we definitely have worked with Barbara in the past under the Jobs for the Future Accelerating Opportunity Project, and she continues on. So we are very delighted to have her as a part of the process. So I will turn it over to Dr. Endel, and she will talk about our goals.
Great, Jennifer. Thank you very much. And I also want to say good morning to everybody, and thanks for taking time out of your very busy schedules to be here. As Jennifer mentioned earlier, this is a really great preview, our own sort of coming attractions prior to our meeting on Thursday. So whether these are familiar to you or you're seeing these for the first time, what I'd like to do for this section is essentially walk through the 4 goals and the objectives that were developed by the task force and get your sense around the structure of how this looks and the goals, because as Jennifer mentioned, I'm so excited to help facilitate the meeting on Thursday and then the following one to get an action plan to make this really come to life. So this is exciting, and I've so appreciated the opportunity to be part of this process with you. So very quickly, goal number 1, improve outcomes by scaling effective models and strategies across the system. So this is really building on Illinois' terrific history of scaling effective strategies, including your work with the Joyce Foundation with Shifting Gears, and obviously continuing with Accelerating Opportunity. So this was an intentional goal that the task force talked about around, let's take the models that have been very effective, and we know they have been because we've got data behind them, and make sure that we can scale those across more parts of our system, and thereby impacting then the outcomes, our performance outcomes in the system. Goal number 2, so increase post-secondary transitions and credential attainment. This is something that I think is very consistent even from the plan, the first plan from 2009 to 2013, 14. And that was, again, there are so few students that we want to increase just the number of students that make that transition, if that's their goal, into post-secondary, knowing that the kind of jobs and the future of work is going to be demanding a higher level of skill. Goal number 3, strengthen college and career readiness. This is a pretty clear goal here. I think the task force wanted to make sure that we're doing all we can in the work that we're doing together with our partners, so our students are ready to go as much as they can for that transition to college, or if they're going into careers, that they've got employability skills and the training to do well. And then lastly, goal number 4, this one was a really, really interesting goal and a really good goal that the task force created. This is really acknowledging that our learning shouldn't stop when we get finished with our high school equivalency or even that first credential, that we need to be building our educational background and increasing our skills across our whole pipeline. And I know that Jennifer, together with Brian Durham, the workforce groups, et cetera, really wanted to make sure that building these comprehensive pathway systems with enabling technologies was important. So Jennifer, do you mind going to the next screen? So this is goal number 1, just as a reminder, scaling effective models. So if you wouldn't mind, next one. And these are the goal statements or the goal objectives and that were part of this particular goal. So task force set the broad goal, and then we went and did deeper work to really bring this to life. So as Jennifer mentioned, we won't go into every one of these. I'll just highlight a few that seem really important. So obviously your ICAPS model has been something that you've put a lot of work into. So this was something really top of mind for the task force and those that served on this particular goal team to think about how can we develop and expand and implement the ICAPS models 1 and 2 across the state. The other thing that was very important to the group, if you sort of look toward the bottom, was develop on-ramps for basic skill students and English language learners into these comprehensive career pathway systems. Knowing now that the majority of your students are English language learners in programs, we felt this was a really important objective for this goal. And last, the group that worked on this particular goal and these objectives with that last point, really thinking about cohort models and the power of peers with making sure that students, in addition to the support they might receive from their instructors, et cetera, really had the support from those around them in this work. So that is goal number 1, objectives. Jen, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. All right, goal number 2, this one again is really core to this work. How do we get students, the most amount of students into our post-secondary institutions and not just start and have access to, but finish that credential? So let me show you the objectives here for this. The first objective is a little bit long. However, I think you get the point around that having on-ramps and multiple entry points for students at different levels is clearly how we want to go with this. And to be able to, as Jennifer mentioned, work with our partners, community-based organizations and other agencies, workforce in particular, being able to put together some breakthrough strategies that have referral systems that really help drive students into our programs and make their attainment of secondary credentials more clear. We talked a lot in this goal about work-based learning opportunities and how experiential learning and other work really helps students understand what's involved in the occupation or the sector they're thinking of and helps validate that this is the right decision. You know, we know that almost 50% of students, for example, in STEM fields leave the field within the first year. So we know that choosing the right field and getting the credential and then getting some experience on the job or across with employers is super important. And then obviously the last point here is something I felt Illinois is such a historic leader and a national leader across the country with your professional development and making sure that we've got professional development for the providers across all the state, and then making sure, as we have historically, the work you did with both Shifting Gears and Accelerating Opportunity, you know, making sure this isn't a career pathway to nowhere, that basically you've got our labor market connected and you know the jobs that are going to be available, and being in real time able to not saturate the market with too many students and fields, et cetera. So Jen, next slide, please. All right, goal number 3, strengthen college and career readiness. As you can probably ascertain as you're scanning this particular goal, we felt that each one of these goals, while they have their own unique set of objectives, had really overlapping areas. So for this one, this idea about public and private partnerships was just really critical. And this is really the Illinois model here. You guys have done such a terrific job across time of knitting together partnerships at the regional and local level. And hats off, you guys are doing a terrific job around this, and we want to make sure that that continues into the next 5 years and beyond. And then the sense around making sure that we're partnering with community colleges and our four-year colleges and universities to maximize the ability for Pell eligibility for students, so that ability to benefit provision. And if you remember, we were in July of 2012, we were without an ability to benefit provision for almost 3 years before we were able to get parts of it reinstated. And this is something I think is important to Jennifer and the team, and obviously to all of you across Illinois, and that is students shouldn't see financial aid as a barrier if we're able to help them enter and qualify. So then okay. Jen, if you wouldn't mind going back one more slide, I think goal 3 had a huge number of objectives. Is that possible? Great, thank you. So goal number 3 had, they were busy. They had a lot of stuff going on, and I think that they're all important, which is why we included this. So again, here as you scan the objectives, you'll look and see, obviously alignment and service integration across local WIOA core and required partners. That mention again that Jen just had about adhering to college and career standards, and making sure that we're aligning content and rigor so that students are ready for whatever comes next for them. And then also this last bullet here around expanding funding models to include flexibility and state fund use by providers. So it's really thinking about how we can take the resources, the precious resources we have, and use it more wisely in scaling and supporting this work. All right, Jennifer, now we are ready for goal 4, my friend. So this one again is a really, really great goal with lifelong career pathway systems, and then thinking about enabling technologies again as we look to this new economy. So Jen, let's see what the objectives here look like. So essentially, this was an example at the top here about integrated education and training, or the IETs, and making sure that the requisite structure of our IETs would be helpful. So the work you've been doing in your bridge programs, and then obviously with integrated education and training, which is really what your ICAPS and AO model looks like, all that is really, really important. Again, we mentioned that work-based learning, and leveraging the employer relationships that you have is really critical. And this is an area that I think we could really expand over the next 5 years, and even have our employer partnerships on a more strategic level. This task force also talked a lot about making sure that students are equipped with not just technology skills such as knowing how to, run Microsoft products or be savvy with email systems, etc., but actually looking through and making sure that our digital literacy included providing ability to work with technology at a distance, either through online learning or other instructional strategies, and thinking about technology, not for technology's sake, but really thinking about how to use technology more flexibly in the sort of skills that will be required in a job that may, that students may be facing. So it's really about not just understanding the technology, but then in the processes, how to use it moving forward. And last, we know that students do a lot of learning outside of our traditional classrooms, and how can we make sure with our prior learning assessments that we can put students in the best place for them to be successful, and acknowledge the work and experience and their skills and knowledge that they have already. So Jennifer, let's go ahead. I'm gonna, if this sounds good to you all, I will stop there and see if we've got any questions about any of our 4 goals that were derived from the task force, and then the associated objectives, because this is going to form the core of our work for the meeting on Thursday. We'll be basically developing an action plan around these 4 goals and objectives.
There have been no additional questions at this point.
Great. So Jen, let me touch base with you. Is this something you'd like to go over with the group, or shall I?
I think you can go on and do that. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. All right, everyone. So I think this work was always envisioned in a couple phases, and for the first phase is finished with the broader goals and objectives that were put together in the strategic plan. And for me, I think this is really the fun part, to be able to work with really smart people solving these issues, to think about putting our our subcommittee together. So as you well know, today sort of kicks off our phase two with helping you get an information base prior to our meeting on Thursday. Thursday on March 1st will be our first meeting of our Strategic Action Subcommittee. And I think, Jennifer, maybe you can talk a little bit about this when I hand it back over, but we have a really terrific group of over 30 individuals that will be part of this, helping develop the action plan. So then in March or so, we will take about a month to work with you. I will be, in particular, taking the information and the work that we've accomplished on March 1st and then putting that together in an action plan draft. And then we'll be coming back together on April 3rd to validate the plan and finalize anything that we missed. This would be based on public comments and making sure that we have it right in terms of the action plan associated then with this work. And then at the end of April, we'll be submitting that. That would be approved by ICCB. It in effect will be a little bit of what I think of as an appendix to this strategic plan. But really, for me, it's going to be our blueprint moving forward over the next 5 years. And if we've done it well, the action plan will be integrated into really the thinking and the processes, the systems across not only adult education, but in workforce and career technical with core partners. And so then the implementation will really start. But for me, knowing the work you've been doing, this is the arc of the work. This will all be continuing. So Jennifer, next one. So this one, maybe Jennifer, you or Casey might want to just talk a little more about the location and that, and then I can talk a little bit about the meeting agenda if that sounds good.
Okay. The Strategic Action Subcommittee meeting will be this Thursday, March 1st, and will take place at the Hyatt Place Hotel in Bloomington, Normal. And those of you that are traveling by train, it's not that far from the actual train station. We tried to make sure that we were on the train schedule in terms of the start time. At 10:30 a.m. we will begin promptly, and we're going to let you go by 3 o'clock p.m. We will also have lunch will be provided. Right now, with all of the adult education staff and others that will be attending, we're up to somewhere around 50 individuals that will be attending. So we're looking at making sure that we have representation from all of our core partners, as well as a large majority of the participants will be adult education administrators. We're also including instructors as a part of the discussions, as well as transition specialists. We're making sure that a large number of those individuals are included as a part, as well as our professional development network, as well as I think we'll have one business that will be a part of the discussion. So this is going to be a little bit more comprehensive than with the task force, because we really feel that the strategic action items that we will be developing are going to be core to in the delivery of what we're doing. So we wanted to make sure that we had great representation.
Great. So Jennifer, shall I go ahead and talk a little bit about the meeting goals? And then I think the agenda is next for everyone to just, you guys get a sneak preview before the meeting on Thursday. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Great. So there are several goals with this meeting, and essentially we want to make sure that that in the end that we're co-designing and developing these priority actions in this action plan, and that they're all connected to and supporting the 4 strategic goals. The other thing we'll be doing is figuring out ways around how we can scale the strategies to ensure the actions will be realized. I think across the roughly 7 states and 85 community colleges that were part of Accelerating Opportunity, I think I just hats off to Illinois with the sort of strength of your process for scaling. And I just think you guys understand how to do that very well compared to some states nationally. So it'll be fun to really work with you and see how we can take that innovative and ingenuity to new heights around these priority actions. So next, we also know that, again, no one organization can do this alone. So when we talk about these associated support systems, we want to make sure that we've got our core partners bought in and understanding the goals you have and what those actions are going to look like, and making sure you've got both policy and state legislative support for this. And I think that's really important. This fourth goal with identifying the strongest levers. So in Illinois, you know what things will work and in large part what may crop up as barriers. We're going to unpack that a little bit at the meeting to begin with, and trying to stay in the positive around how can we make sure we're pressing on the strongest levers to get this plan realized. And then last, we'll go over a little bit of the process and the timeline for getting those action steps developed. So here's what the day is going to look like. It looks like a lot of time on the calendar, right? 10:30 to 3. But if we do our job well, I think it'll fly by and we'll get a lot done. So what will happen is Jennifer will welcome and we'll do introductions. My assumption is you will be meeting some new people, and that'll be really terrific. Jennifer will go over just the purpose of the meeting and just set the stage a little bit around where we are in this process. And then I'll spend maybe about a half hour or so thinking through what makes a good plan stick, and how can we make sure that the action steps and really this work around implementation can happen in Illinois to a deep degree. And then what we will do for really the remainder of the time is start associating those priority actions for the objectives and getting deep around, for example, how do we make sure that the enabling technologies can be embedded in our work? This is the time where we'll do a lot of innovative thinking, and experience will help us too, of putting together that action plan and sorting out how do we make things happen now that we know the what of the goals and the objectives. And then in the end, Jennifer and I and the team together will talk again about just the process and the timeline. And the fun part I forgot to mention is here with the priority actions, we'll be essentially breaking up into teams so that those that had experience or had worked previously with any of the goals that you have, going back to those and help associated with the priority actions, and then we'll distribute the rest of you across our goal areas to work on that action plan. And together with myself, Amy, and Dr. Anderson will be facilitating those breakouts when we have time on Thursday. So I'm so excited to come and be with you and do this work. And it's such a really good thing to be able to put an action plan together. Not all states have taken the step to do this, so hats off to Illinois, and I'm just looking forward to it. So Jen, I'll turn it back over to you. And I can mention this, or you can too, but we did have some pre-reading. We are educators at heart. So obviously we want you to do sort of three things, how to get ready for our March 1st meeting. So we made the strategic plan, I think, designed it for lots of absorbing of good data. I tried to be a little less text heavy than some reports might look like. So definitely make sure you're perusing the plan. And then I did put together three really good sort of either blogs or articles that get to the heart of, really this is so much of this work with implementation is change management and how adult education is changing, especially that first article from Evolution, I think would be important to read. And then last, just come with your ideas about how to operationalize the plan and how you can do your part and help everybody see their part with implementing the goals and objectives. So Jen, is there anything else to add around this particular slide on how to get ready for Thursday?
I would just say, just reiterate, just make sure that you're familiar with the plan, because that will be the basis of our discussion. So I think you have all of the articles and pre-meeting materials that you've identified are good ones for what we're about to embark upon. Okay, so we've gone over giving you an overview of the process, and we've also given you an overview of the goals. We've also talked a little bit about what the expectations are from the meeting. We've provided you with homework and want to ask if there are any questions that we can answer at this point before we in the session today.
No questions have been submitted.
No questions. So we're going to take it that we did an absolutely fantastic job in providing the information. So we're going to give you back a few minutes of your day so that you can go back to the work that you do so well within the state. And we want to again thank you for agreeing to participate as a part of the subcommittee on developing the action steps. And we look forward to seeing you on Thursday, March 1st. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or to Nora Rossman. We will be more than happy to answer any of your final questions before the meeting. Thanks again for your participation, and again, we look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thank you.